Hello and welcome to the Black Teacher Voice. I'm your host, Brittney Washington, and today we're back with another episode. Episode 8. I'm so excited. Um, it's been a journey just knowing that I'm transferring schools and making different changes, different grade levels. And something that dawned on me was for episode 8, I thought I would talk about representation and how it matters to the students, to the teachers, the books that you read, the resources, all of those things that we just use and do so often every day, to think about the representation behind all of it. So, starting out today with episode 8, thinking about our students. Your students are placed into your classroom for a reason, or at least I think that. I think that you get the students that you get for you to learn your best lessons as teachers, but then also because that's what the students need. It sometimes works out that way where you may be challenged by students that you are getting in for a new bunch of students. You may also have students that'll push your thinking, and I think it's just important to think about the representation within the classroom. And I know that a lot of different, school districts and schools are working towards having more of a representation of all. And that's been the biggest focus. Like within the last few years, I feel like I've seen it just shift in a way that is great, but we still have a lot of work to do in most of the schools. So thinking about students, they are everything, and it's good for them to be able to see that there are students that look like them, that there are students that don't look like them, that are students that have some of the same similarities or characteristics and some that have different ones. And I think that we can use those moments to do some of our best teaching for students and to get them to understand that we are all different and we all have so many wonderful talents to bring to the table for our best learning. And we know that when we think about all of the people that invent things, people that create and develop so many wonderful things out there, no two people are exactly the same. And so, really getting students to recognize that that representation of a variety of different types of learners and students from different backgrounds, different age groups, all of those things matter. When we think about teachers, having a Black teacher, it matters. It makes a difference. Having another teacher of color makes a difference. And I think that during these moments where I have been in classrooms where my student population does not look like me, I think it's very important for them to get that experience and that exposure to having a teacher who does not look like them and who they can learn from and, try to just crush some of these stereotypes that they have about the Black people and Black culture. To be able to get them to recognize that there is so much more than what is portrayed to be in the media or what their parents have told them or what they believe, unconsciously about another race. And so I always find it very important for students to be able to have that space and that time with me as a Black educator in the classroom. And I think it just makes a difference. It really does. I know that the journey is really interesting when you are one of the few or only Black teachers in spaces, but it's definitely very eye opening for students and for families and for staff personnel, everyone to be able to get that experience. And so when thinking about having teachers that look like you and being able to build that relationship, students love that. And they love to ask questions, which I always encourage my students to ask questions. If you don't know, what else could you do other than ask or do some research or to find out, to hear others' perspectives, to hear other stories, and just go from there. without feeling like I'm just so afraid to ask this question, and trying to like not make that experience such a worrisome experience for students, and to bring that vulnerability for them, and let them know that it's okay to ask questions and it's okay to do it in a respectful manner where you get to learn more about people and where they come from that are different than you. When we think about the representation of books, even, I know that there has been a lot of talk about our books, our current books that we use as educators, and the books that students are reading. And there are so many brilliant, talented authors out there that are making some amazing books. That's all that I can say about books right now. I love to open up a new book. So anytime that I get the opportunity to like research a new book, or a new book comes out or gets released, I'm all over it. Like, okay, what's the theme of this book? Like, oh, we got some brown and black babies in here, like all of this magic and joy. And it just makes my heart so happy. Because when I think about my experience as a child, um, thinking back to the books, I cannot recall a lot of them that had characters that look like me. And it's really interesting as an educator now, thinking back on that and reflecting, because I don't have many that I can just think of that we did book studies on, or even in middle school. Like, everything was, I can even name one. I think maybe one or two books that I can name. But other than that, it's really hard for me to think of books. So I feel like the world is in such a better place. I know there's still a lot of work to do, but that's why it's important, as you're setting up your classroom, or as you are thinking about what books you want to use when you're doing your literacy units or study, um, to think about that representation. Are you showing characters that are a wide variety, of very diverse group of different characters, and different characters that are going through different things? Or are you just limiting your selection, in a way that does not provide that representation? Um, I know even right now there are plenty of book lists out there for educators to be able to look at different topics, to be able to research different topics, to be able to find lessons that go along with them. And I find those to be very helpful. I know for me, just being able to build that library of resources, it means so much. And it makes a big difference in how your students get to be able to have those mirrors and those windows, to be able to feel like they can connect with others in different ways through literature. So I would highly encourage every educator out there to take a look at your library. Look and see what books you have. Even if it's just, I like to use sticky notes, but even if it's just using sticky notes to sort out books and find out, okay, how many books do you have with this population? How many books do you have with this population or this group? And to be able to identify where your library needs a little work, and being okay with knowing that this is the first step of making sure that you get to a point where you can assess your library. And it all just takes that first step of really recognizing, that you may have a group that's missed out, that you have that missed opportunity where, students can be able to be exposed to so many different books, and storylines. I think that that's another important thing too, when thinking about the representation of groups, making sure that there is joy within some of those storylines, not just all about the struggle or the overcoming of the struggles, but thinking about just the joy and, passion and creativity that some of our Black authors or authors of color are putting into books, for the purpose of bringing along that joy. So I would just really encourage you to take a look at your library, take a look at the things that you're posting up in the classroom. I know for me right now, I've just been asking myself that question, like, okay, if I was of any race, do I see myself? If I had any type of disability, can I see myself in these books, in these posters, in, the things that I'm putting up? would I be able to see that? And asking myself that as an educator to make sure that you have that representation in your classroom environment, to make sure that your students have that. It's definitely something that you should want to do. And if you're not doing it, don't think that I'm knocking you for being, that way. But it's just a thought that I had and I came across as I was setting up my classroom. And I was thinking about just looking at the different books. I know there's a whole nother project that I have to go into of looking at my books. I haven't gotten there yet. I'm still like putting up posters and putting up bulletin paper and organizing desk and just so many things that I've been doing. But to be able to take time out of that session of planning out your classroom and your classroom environment, focusing on the library, focusing on the things that you're putting up on the wall, and making sure that you have that. Something else that I was thinking about too, as I was putting up things in the classroom, is just this idea of the resources. What resources can we tap into that are out there, and being able to build those resources for yourself as educators to be able to know that you have something to go to, whether that be resources for your students, resources for yourself. I know that I found it to be very helpful to peruse through on different sites and reading different educational articles that really tap into some of the big topics that are going on in education right now. And I find them to be so helpful, just being able to read, either if it's from someone's perspective or if it's from the perspective of what they've been working towards in their own personal classrooms or experiences. And I find it to be very helpful. That's all that I could say. And it makes you think a lot. It makes you think about your perspective as an educator, and as a Black educator in the classroom. It also makes you think about things that still need to be done and the work that needs to continue on within our classrooms and in our spaces. And so I would highly encourage you to do that too. Just think about the resources that are out there, because there are so many amazing, dope, talented educators, principals, administrative people that are doing so much work to make sure that people know that the representation matters and that it is very effective when teachers are in the space of identifying where they need to do the work to be able to seek the change in the schools and in those spaces where the representation may be lacking. And I think that it is definitely something that, for me personally, that I try to channel into as I start a new school year of, okay, let me think about some of the resources that would best help me, or where am I looking to gain more knowledge, in what areas, where do I want to grow as a professional development, where do I want to see my biggest growth, and to be able to have that focus area and dive deeper. Even if it's writing a list of questions. I know sometimes I do in my little notebook of just writing different questions down that just push my thinking, or make me shift my thinking, or that I come back to later where I'm like, okay, well, I need to dive a little bit deeper into that particular topic. Um, I definitely want to encourage you to do it. I don't know what else to say other than just think about how you want your classroom environment and space to feel. Think about how you want your students to remember you. Think about the experiences that you provide to your students and to your colleagues, and people around you, because it makes a big difference in how your experience is shaped and how the others' experiences are shaped as well. So think about your students, think about your fellow colleagues, think about books, think about your resources, and really go for it. Just go for it. That's all that I can say. Just go for it. And it's okay if we don't have the answers. And it's okay if we write down the questions. It's okay if we come back to questions. It's okay that We don't have all of the things, and being okay with knowing that that's okay, but not sitting in that for too long. Figuring out what you can do about that if you don't have the answer. Thinking about what you can create or develop and being able to put it out there to the world because that's what it's all about. And that's what the Black Teacher Voice is all about as well. Just making sure that the Black voice is out there, that it's heard, that we have that representation in our schools and our educators, and that we make change and that we have change and we create change because it's so important and it's so needed. So, I encourage you to do all the things this school year. If you already have started, I hope that your school year is going amazing. And just know that these things that I talked about today, you can still tap into and channel in right now, even if you already have started. If you haven't started like me and you're still getting things together and you start after the holiday, you can do it as well. So just keep that in mind and have a great school year. Something to reflect on is just thinking about the representation. Focus on that word, representation. What does it mean to you? What does it feel like? What does it look like? Just how does that shape the decisions that you make as an educator? Have a good week.